Hey everybody, it's Ralph Davis from Ralph Davis Reptiles. You're listening to Jason Rossi of Her Per Parade. Ralph Davis, out.
It says here we should work in teams. I tend to think of myself as a one-man wolf pack.
You're about to enter Information Overload, a worldwide transmission with Her Per Parade's featured Breeder of the Week. Here's your host, Jason Rossi.
I would like to welcome you back to Her Per Parade, a weekly worldwide transmission. We are simulcasting on RossiReptiles.com, Buzzsprout, and don't forget to subscribe and download us on iTunes. This week we have a very special guest for you. He's what I consider a pioneer in the ball python mutation game. He brought you such genes as the Phantom, Platinum, and the Goblin, just to name a few. We haven't heard from him since he enticed us with the Flatline. The king is in the building, Ralph Davis from Ralph Davis Reptiles. Ralph, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Glad to be here. The Goblin, man, that's crazy. I like how you brought that intro in, the Goblin. I remember when I got the Goblin eons ago, and Kevin McCurley called it the peanut butter and jelly ball because everybody thought I was nuts for the name and even thinking it was a mutation. And I produced from that thing a couple times and had no clue what a yellow belly was or any of that stuff. I just called it a gob marker, and then sooner or later I ended up getting the two gobs together, and that's how I hit on my Super Goblin, which, of course, is an ivory. But the rest is history after that. But I remember bringing him in. I still have it. And I think he's something besides a Goblin. But anyway, go ahead. What do you got for me?
What year did you bring him in?
Without looking at his card, I'm going to think 1999.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. I still have him. I've got all my originals. I got Platty Daddy. I've got the original Goblin. I've still got some of the Dinkin projects that I had that never panned out, like the Anatharistic and the Arctic and the Burgundies and all that other stuff. But, yeah, I still have them. They're still kicking around. So I don't do much with them. The Platty Daddy's been off forever. Ever since he started producing Platinums, I just, something about him. He's so nostalgic. I don't even want to risk anything happening to him. So he's set up like a little king in his kingdom.
Why don't you give us, our listeners, a little background on the Platty Daddy gene?
Oh, the Platty Daddy gene. What do you want to know? Is how I think that it works?
Yeah, I want to know that, and then tell them how you brought it in and the role.
Well, as far as bringing it in, I got it from Noah, and. Long story short, I had met Noah with a partner of mine at the time, Lou, and me and Lou met Noah, I'm thinking 98 maybe, down in Orlando when the National Breeders' Expo was down there. Anyway, everybody and their brother was trying to get a hold of Noah back then. He was a king. I mean, he was treated like royalty because he could get so many cool cherry-picked, one-of-a-kind. Anyway, we built a relationship and started buying some lower-end morphs, even though they didn't cost lower-end at the time. And he happened to be over here in the States when the Platinum showed up. One of his people found it and sent him a picture, and we looked at it, and then he got back over there, and he looked at it and made me a price, which was a lot of money at the time. I bought it. And when we brought it over, and I've got this up on my website, the thing come in like an ice pop. He was not frozen, but he was on the verge of semi-solid. And we thought he was deader than a doornail, I mean, nothing. Anyway, Lou starts, me and Lou are both crying in the car. We lost all this money, and the snake's gone, and blah, 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 blah. And, we didn't know what the heck to do at the time. So Lou's rubbing it. We got the heat on in the truck because it was the winter time. And his tongue come out and stayed out. And I was just like, he's dead. He's a goner, his tongue's out and it's not going back in. Well, it went back in. And Lou's rubbing it. And sure enough, he started using his tongue and actually started, acting like he had a little life. So I'm like, we didn't know nothing about insurance claims or any of that other stuff. We already been through customs, the whole 9 yards. We were a wreck because, bringing this animal in. At the time, when you first learn how to bring stuff in from overseas, it's a little scary. So anyway, on the way home, he came to life, and he totally acted normal. And, I was like, oh, my God, I still thought he'd get RI or something. He's just a little guy. And, back then, of course, I didn't have any patience, so we set him up, and back then I was using cypress moss, and I had a flower pot with the hole cut out on the top, and set him up, and had him real, a nice little setup, and let him set up for, I guess it was that night and the next morning, and of course I'm down there looking at him every second to make sure he's all right. And I threw a little hopper mouse in there with him the next evening, and just ran out of there. I was like, man, there's no way. He's not going to eat. Well, I come back, of course, 5 minutes later because I had to know. I intended on just waiting all night. It was just a little mouse. Wasn't going to mess with him. And I opened it up 5 minutes later, and he was wrapped around it, and the rest is history. That's it. And, I raised him up. I got him big enough to breed. And, of course, back then, we weren't even thinking about codominant or dominant or anything like that. I just, I thought it was some kind of a cool hypo. And raised him up and bred him out and produced clutches, codominantly at the time. And I didn't know what the heck was going on, but I produced, animals that had his color and his background kind of and his face tones, but, their colors were all dialed up 10 times compared to his, him being so pale. So I was like, man, this is weird. And, that's when I came up with the whole lesser thing. I didn't think they were actually platinums, and, I called them platinums back then, and then I was thinking about, what the heck do I call the offspring that are normal, and blah, 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 blah. So, and, I just kept everything back and held on to it, and just kept working the project out, always thinking that, there's got to be something else. There's got to be something else. So, I just kept on producing lessers. And then finally, I was able to make a platy daddy by breeding the sibs from the platinum, which were just normals, thinking in her head I was trying to make a ghost or a hypo or something, just try to pull that other gene that was making him so pale out. And that's when I finally hit on the platinum. So, I made the platinums, which was him, and then the lessers being, not that they are lesser. Well, they are lesser. They're, at the time they didn't cost a fraction of what he did. But I didn't really have any platinums to sell. And that's how that whole thing come around, I just worked it out and worked it out and worked it out. And to this day, it's still, it's still a very, very misunderstood gene. I think a lot of people think they know more about it than I do. All I know is a platinum bred to a normal makes lessers and normals. Those normals carry something that makes the platinum. And only a lesser or a butter or a phantom or whatever else out there. I'm thinking the Russos and the Mojaves and all that stuff. When they get in line with that het platy, that dilute gene turns on, and, you get a daddy out of it. You just get that, you get that snake with a paint job that's been toned down 10 times. So that's kind of how that whole thing worked out. And, I'm glad I stuck with it, because nowadays, if we would have got something like that, if I would have got something like that a year ago and started working it out and made lessers, I would have been like, I guess he's just real pale or whatever, and that's that. And I would have been like, oh, there they are, they're lessers. I probably wouldn't even, really try to work it out, thinking that there's a hypo or this, that, or the other. And I'm sure, I'm talking out of my ass. I'm sure I would have definitely tried to work something out, because obviously he was pale for a reason. But back then, it was unheard of, just like, they're nothing. The lessers are it, and that's that, and, the platy's just, he's a one of a kind, and he seems to be pale, and all his offspring aren't, and that's that. So that's how that started. It worked out really well for me, though. It's a long project, I'll give it that.
So what is a platy daddy to a lesser? What's the outcome of that?
Oh, geez, man, you're going to stump me all over the place. Platy